Welcome back to the Field of 68 2023 NBA Draft Player Profiles. I'm Greg Waddell. I am joined today by the one and only Rob Doster. And guess what? We're talking a UConn Husky today. Adama Sanogo, the best player on the national champions, 17 points a game, 7 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 61% from the floor. And Rob, 36% from three-point range after not making a three his first 2 years in college. Will Adama Sanogo find a fit in the NBA and be a long-term player, maybe a second contract player? Yes or no?
I think so. I think he is a guy that will hang around the league for a while. I don't think that he is ever going to be a star. I think he is somebody that is going to have to accept that at the NBA level, he's bringing in to do a very specific job, something like a Kevon Looney with the Warriors. Not the same kind of player, but a guy who went from being a top 10 prospect, a guy that was thought to have the potential to be one of these like star big combo forwards heading into the NBA. I think when he came out of high school, there were comps of like Carmelo and Paul George and players of that ilk. He's gotten to the league and he's accepted this idea that, hey, you know what? I'm going to be 6'10". I'm going to have long arms. I'm going to be athletic. I'm going to put on all this weight, and I'm going to be the best rebounder, and I'm just going to fly around and do all the shit that nobody wants to do while Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole go out there and get buckets. And he won a championship last year as a result of it. I think if you look at what Xavier Tillman is doing at Memphis, a guy that is accepting his role as a defender, as a rebounder, as kind of a piece that can move the ball and somebody that does enough of a job on all of those other things offensively that he becomes a threat. I think that's another thing that you could look at with Adama. Now, I would expect that he probably ends up going undrafted, right? And if he is drafted, I think it's going to end up being a late second round pick. But I do think that he is a guy that at the end of the day, you want to bet on the human being here. And the reason I say that is he's only been playing basketball for 6 years. That's when he came here from Mali. And every year you can see the level of progression that he's making, and you see the level of work that he's putting in. When he got to UConn, he was like this chunky dude that couldn't really do much other than like score those little jump hooks in the paint and get a couple of rebounds. As a sophomore, he comes in and he's a terrific offensive rebounder and a real threat around the basket, but he hadn't learned enough about the way to play and the actual game beyond like, I'm going to get the ball in the post and I'm going to go make a move and get a bucket. Like he understood how to play one-on-one of the post. He didn't understand how to play basketball within the team concepts. And then this past season, I mean, we saw what he did with all the against Gonzaga with the 5 assists in the first half. You saw the threes that he hit against San Diego State in the first 2 possessions of the game, of the national championship game. You just saw him develop from what he was as a freshman into the single most dominant player on a dominant national championship team when things were all said and done. And I don't think that progression is going to stop. So whatever you ask him to do, he's going to do it. He's never going to be a superstar. When you're a 6'8" kind of ground bound big guy, you're kind of limited in terms of what you can be. But when it comes to asking him to do a job and play a role at the NBA level, if you see guys like Xavier Tillman and you see guys like Kevon Looney figuring out ways to be able to contribute and make a whole bunch of money and hang around the NBA as a role player, I think Adama Sanogo is going to end up doing that. I would not bet on him. I would not bet against him in 10 years, looking up and just seeing him on like as the 9th man checking in for 8 minutes on some playoff team, just because he's a good teammate, he's a good role player, and he understands his job.
Yeah, I think everything you just said is accurate. He also is one of the most fun interviews ever. Anytime you get a microphone in front of him, you never know what's going to come out. This is just a stance I have in general, and I don't mean to negatively apply this to Adama too much, but you mentioned like he's only played basketball for 6 years. I hate those guys in general. Like they're very impressive stories. I give them credit whenever it happens. A lot of times it's guys that come over from impoverished countries and, you know, they're these athletic feats that learn how to play the game. And Joel Embiid's a great example of, oh my God, look how far he's come. Now he's the NBA MVP. Sanogo's story is incredible. Give me a guy who did play basketball since they were like 3 years old, though. Like 9 times out of 10, like it's impressive. It's not something that makes me want to draft you. What does make me want to draft Adama Sanogo here is I think he's added to his game every single year in a major way. And I don't think you see that from especially the big men in college very often. We're going to talk about another center prospect in this draft right after we wrap this video, who I don't think has added to his game. Sanogo absolutely has. The shooting numbers were really impressive to me as a junior. He played less minutes as a junior than he did as a sophomore, and his production across the board was up. That's wildly impressive on a team that had a lot of different options to score the basketball. Like you mentioned, there's games he's had a bunch of assists. There's games he just dominated on the boards. Pretty much every way a college center can impact the game. He's had games where he's won a game for UConn by doing that. So I think he's a really versatile piece as far as if he does go undrafted, like he would be at the top of my list if I'm an NBA GM of who can I try to go get my hands on without having to spend a draft pick. But I wouldn't be shocked if a team does decide to throw a late second round flyer his way. Let me ask you this. Are you surprised at all that he is remaining in the NBA draft? Because there were a lot of rumors he was going to end up in the transfer portal and play another year of college basketball.
A little bit. I thought that there was no way that both him and Donovan Clingan were both going to be at UConn again next year. It was not going to happen. I don't think either party would have wanted that. I don't think that Clingan would have returned to school if it was guaranteed that Sanogo was going to come back to school. I think that when he weighed his options, it was, okay, do I want to go play somewhere else other than UConn, where maybe UConn fans aren't going to be happy with that, where maybe I'm not going to have a chance to be a legend, or am I going to shoot my shot and see if I could end up being a guy that can latch on with an NBA team or end up in Europe? Like that the other thing about him is that he's going to be an incredibly valuable player for some of those big EuroLeague teams, because he's basically an American basketball player that doesn't have an American passport. And what people don't talk enough about him is, or about players like that, is you only get a certain number of Americans when you are playing on some of those teams that can pay the most money in the EuroLeague and in the Spanish league and in some of those other overseas leagues. So wherever he goes, he's going to have a chance to make a very good living playing basketball, whether that is as a guy on an NBA roster, whether it is somebody on a two-way contract, which is, for my money, is probably the most likely outcome here. Because I do think, look, at the end of the day, he is 6'8". He is 260 whatever pounds. He is a guy that is a below the rim player. He is not a great rim protector. He's good at getting in the way. And I do think that the next step in his evolution as a player is going to be as a guy that could be a little bit more switchable. I don't think he's ever someone that you can play 1 through 5 against as a 5-man, but I do think he's going to be someone that is effective against drop coverage, and someone that, if he is forced to, can do a job staying in front of a guard. But a lot of this is betting on the human being, right? As opposed to betting on the basketball player with the physical tools and what he was last season. What he was last season is probably a guy that is undraftable, right? Our partner for today's episode is Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1 during the college basketball season, and I loved the impact that it had on my energy levels. I'm a big coffee in the morning guy, but by the time that the afternoon would hit, I needed another boost. AG1 helped me tremendously, especially on those days when I didn't want to get up off the couch and go hit the gym. Their tagline is AG1 is comprehensive health and the power of habit in one. And man, that could not be more true. It's nearly impossible to eat and drink in a healthy manner in the month of February and the month of March when you are in my business. And AG1 was exactly the supplement that I needed to improve my gut health and cover my nutritional basis for the day. I've continued that into April. I've continued that into May, and I'm going to continue that the rest of the summer. All I have to do is mix a scoop of AG1 with some water, or maybe add it into a smoothie, and I'm ready to go. Do it after lunch, and you'll be ready to go for the rest of the day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/field68. That's field 68 FIELD, the number 6, the number 8, and you can get yours now. So check it out and help support this show. Thanks. But if you bet on the continued development, if you bet on the piece that's going to be in the locker room, if you bet on the idea that he is going to find a role and thrive in it, then he's someone that I think is worth the relatively minimal investment that it will take to get him into your organization.
Rob, 19 years ago, Emeka Okafor was selected second overall in the NBA draft. If Adama Sanogo was just thrown in a time machine and dropped into the 2004 NBA draft, where does he get taken?
Right after Emeka.
He's right there?
Yeah, he's right after Emeka, right before Ben Gordon, who was the number 3 pick in that draft. I imagine that. 3 UConn guys in the top 4 of a draft couldn't be better.
That's a world.
Couldn't be better, Greg. No, but like he is a guy that would have thrived in that area of the NBA, right? When in an era where people throw the ball into the post and you have time to actually go to work. Because I mean, he's so patient on the block. Like that's the thing that more than anything else, I think where the development came from this past season and what turned UConn from a team that kind of struggled a little bit with when Adama was playing the 5 to a team that was almost unstoppable when he was at the 5 is that he figured out that being patient didn't just mean it took him a little bit longer to get his shot. It meant like you see you view who's coming, you see where the double team is coming, you take your time and you make the pass that you need to make. Oh, there's no double team coming. All right, let me go score 1-on-1 against Ryan Kalkbrenner, right? He learned how to play. And I think that is the more than anything else. I think that's the one thing that I can say is like the dude had no idea how to play basketball in a 5-on-5 setting when he got to UConn. He was one of those guys that's like a workout warrior, and he's great in a setting where it's 1-on-1 in the gym. But you ask him to understand what's going on around him, and he didn't get that really until his junior year. And it wasn't really honestly until the end of his junior year that he started figuring it out because he's so young as a basketball player. And that's the one thing that I'll push back on with what you said before is that I do think that with a guy like him, where you've seen the development, right? And you've seen the trajectory, I don't think that there's two schools of thought there. One is that he's already made the leap and this is kind of what he is. I think there's still more room for him to grow, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So look, Xavier Tillman, Kevon Looney, guys in that ilk that kind of get there and understand like, okay, this is the job that I have to do. All right, I'm gonna go do it. I think he's going to be a guy like that.
Yeah, and for the record, Xavier Tillman was 6'8", 245 pounds at Michigan State, so a little undersized as well, at least vertically undersized there. I'm gonna give you the worst case scenario because I think we've kind of floated some best case scenarios here. Jordan Bell, Oregon center, who a lot of guys coming back to that draft were like, this is a sleeper. He does all the little things. He's in the right spot. He's far from his ceiling. He's a late riser. He's an undersized center. Ends up Golden State Warriors, doesn't really ever come to fruition in a rotation spot. I do think there's a world pretty quickly where like Sanogo just doesn't have any sort of next steps, and this is the best version of him. And if that happens, then you're right. He probably is an overseas guy. But okay, gun to your head. You've seen it.
So the Jordan Bell thing is the perfect comparison there. Again, it's not, they are different athletes and the way that they do the job is different, but Jordan Bell was a guy who it was kind of you're betting on the athlete. He could do all of these things. He could play this role, but he needs to figure out how to work within the context of 5-on-5. He never developed that ability to like, if you set a screen and 2 guys go to Steph Curry and the ball gets thrown to you and all of a sudden you're playing 4-on-3 for like a half second, can you make the right pass? Can you make the right read? Can you find a way to be able to take advantage of that moment, which Draymond Green does better than anybody else in the history of the sport? That's where that's the step for Adama Sanogo. Like you got to figure that part out. And if you learn that part, then all of a sudden you become a weapon because of some of the other things that you can do. So I really, that's, yeah, I mean, I like that comparison.
Wow. A Rob Doster stamp of approval on a Monday afternoon. Not a better way to start your week,
big day.
folks. All right. If you enjoyed this video, you will enjoy our live NBA mock draft Thursday, June 15th, 7 p.m. We are bringing in the biggest names in the business to come break down and make selections live for every single pick in the first round. That'll be on the Field of 68 YouTube channel, along with all of the other NBA draft prospect profiles we have done this offseason. We're totaling nearly 100 of those. So go over to the channel, click subscribe while you're over there, and consume all of our NBA draft content leading up to the official NBA draft next week. For Rob Doster, my name is Greg Waddell, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching the Field of 68. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, hit that like button, share this link with your friends, or check out the description for some other places that you can consume Field of 68 content.